Hi, I thank you once again for joining me. Even though the poor are often rough and unrefined, we must not judge them from external appearances nor from the mental gifts they seem to have received. On the contrary, if you consider the poor in the light of faith, then you will observe that they are taking the place of the Son of God who chose to be poor. This is from the writings of St. Vincent de Paul, whom the Church holds up for us every year on September 27th, this coming Monday. St. Vincent de Paul was part of the Catholic Reformation and part of what is known as the French school of spirituality. He was born about the year 1580 into a peasant French family. He became a priest. According to at least one account, he became a priest because he thought that would be an easy life. Okay, now if that is true, well, what we have is an illustration of the divine sense of humor, because he would have a very challenging and a very busy and at the same time a very fruitful life. He heard the confession of a dying man, and that really prompted an awakening in him. And he became very concerned about the needs of the poor, their material needs and their spiritual needs. And he would work with those poorest people. He would be a chaplain to galley slaves. He would serve those whom Pope Francis would call who are on the peripheries of society. His life can be marked by three great concerns: material service to the poor, spiritual service to the poor, and priestly formation. So he worked very hard to serve the poor, even to the point of ransoming slaves. He founded a religious community of men known as the Congregation of the Mission, known also as the Vincentians. And as the name implies, their charism, their gift to the church, among others, is to preach parish missions, to help serve the spiritually poor. And the third was priestly formation. Seminaries were new at this time. The priesthood was not necessarily in the best shape at a time like that. And so the Vincentians did priestly formation. They worked in seminaries. And so they continue to preach parish missions today. They continue to be involved in seminary work. For many years, they worked in our diocese. Now, it wasn't just with a men's congregation, though. St. Vincent de Paul founded with St. Louise de Marillac the Daughters of Charity, also to serve the poor. And they founded hospitals and orphanages. And he also involved lay people in this work. He started an organization known as the Ladies of Charity. Now, the Daughters of Charity worked in our diocese for many years, and to the best of my knowledge, the organization, the Ladies of Charity, is still at work in our diocese. And he also inspired other religious communities. For example, up the river in Leavenworth, there are the Sisters of Charity of Leavenworth, and they would trace their spiritual lineage back to St. Vincent de Paul. Now, we see him as a very kind and sensitive, caring man, and he was. But he wasn't that way by nature. His friends would admit that he could be irascible. And so really what we would see in his life is this work of trying to grow in holiness, trying, as Matthew Kelly would say, to become the best version of oneself. It would be tough, human and spiritual work, but it's all part of that growth in holiness that we're all called to share in. Now, this work of St. Vincent de Paul is also carried on by organizations that bear his name. At our own parish, we have our St. Vincent de Paul food pantry. It's open 5 days a week, every morning, Monday through Friday. They serve the poor and the needy. They serve Christ in the poor and the needy. This is done by volunteers. They're nearly all retired people. I'm very proud of the work that they do for our parish, the work that they do for the poor Christ. And perhaps it's just an architectural coincidence, but the St. Vincent de Paul Food Pantry is in close proximity, one level below the church at our Adoration Chapel. And so while we have people praying before Christ in the Blessed Sacrament, we also have people serving Christ in the poor. And not surprisingly, it's some of the same people who are both upstairs and downstairs. St. Vincent de Paul teaches us to open our eyes to see Christ in others, particularly in the poor and in the needy. May he always inspire us with his example and assist us with his prayers. St. Vincent de Paul, pray for us.